obviously you're feeling the vibe of the conversation, so what are you doing staying here for so long? Keep on.
I just am very interested in how people paint a tableau of how they were raised into then maybe how they think now of things.
I think that's the only thing that really, I mean, your experience and the way that you were raised really like shapes what you believe in many things, right? Like, and nobody knows the way that I grew up, and I don't know the way that you grew up. I don't know the way that you grew up, and like unless you really talk about it, right? And I think that's totally fair.
I mean, and it also goes into who you grew up around after, because there's the family, and then there's when you step outside, your friends.
Sure. And when you're in school,
yeah,
you're there for a lot more time than you are with your parents or guardians.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Experiences,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think for me, like I want to understand, and I want to like know how other people live and what other options are out there. But since I, you know, again, I'm a white girl from Boston, like pretty standard home situation, I get a little bit nervous asking questions because it's like, I'm afraid that people are going to be like, well, you just don't understand. And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to understand, but I want to, but I also just don't want to like...
Yeah. Part of it is you educating yourself too, so that the labor doesn't necessarily fall on the oppressed person. I know that like the topic that we're talking about today is like the oppressed educating the oppressors. The way you can disrupt like that narrative is just simply by educating yourself. So, Google is a beautiful thing. Yeah.
But can't answer
That's
everything.
an interesting...
But there are people who are educators who are online that you could reach out to get those answers, so you don't have to like ask questions of your friends, right? Because your friends aren't always educators. They're just humans that are just trying to live that life, right?
Yeah.
I think you can only really understand what oppression is from personal experience. And so I was only raised in a certain way. Other people were only raised in a certain way. They've gone through certain things. I've gone through certain things. I can't necessarily understand exactly what other people have went through, just the fact that just in the same sense that they cannot understand the way that I was raised and what I have experienced. So I think conversation is warranted, because if I can converse with somebody on a very civil manner and understand their experiences and how they were raised, we can come to some sort of common ground that we can then work together through and get to what is like the root of the oppression.
I think that I'm like I educate myself enough, but like I do rely heavily on like, I ask my friends questions, especially when I'm like super, you know, I trust them and they trust me. I'm like, you know, I was just out to dinner with my gay friend Dan, and I was literally like, I mean, we had a couple bottles of wine, and I was just like, okay, now tell me what this means, and tell me what this means. And he was like, you know,
ready.
He was ready, and he was giving. But I also, like, you know, I've never thought like, okay, I'm not going to ask this question to this, but I'm going to Google it later, because it's this like fine line of like, I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to like educate myself, and I also want people to know that like I'm interested in them too, and like their lives. But yeah, I guess it's like how much should I ask versus how much should I Google?
It should be a combination of both, is what I'm saying. It's just like, just so not all the labor is on your friends, but you are also educating yourself, because you educating yourself isn't just for your friends, it's for your life, it's for you. It's for your openness and your understanding of the world.
I think that's totally fair. I think like, one, I'll say like the reason this conversation doesn't happen a lot is because the biggest fear that like I have as a labeled like white male in our political climate is like not the best. But the biggest fear that I have, at least, is like that I am misunderstood. And it scares the shit out of me that like I could say something that like offends someone else, and like really all I'm coming at is like a perspective like I don't get this and I want to learn. And I was thinking like I just want to have the conversation, but I never once thought to like do research on it. I never once thought to like go and Google what that means.
I have never had an open conversation with them, because I feel like if I say something, it is stepping on a landmine. And making sure that there's a comfortable space that allows my opinion to be heard without labeling, name calling, whatever it may be, and allowing me to voice my own opinion, and knowing that it's not coming from like a malicious or racially charged place. It's really coming from a place of understanding. That and like having that be misconstrued is what is fearful.
So you can't be that scared.
What do you mean?
If you're not even
you're not even.
No, I never even thought of that. I would rather like have the conversation from somebody's like personal experiences. I thought that was like a very good way to educate myself, but I never once thought to go back and Google it.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is that your fear is fear out of embarrassment and not fear out of livelihood. Like somebody like myself and this person right here, like we need to know our rights in order to be able to navigate the world, because like if we say the wrong thing to the wrong person, that could be life or death. For even Vicky, that could be life or death for any of us, right? So like your fear again is out of embarrassment and not necessarily like your livelihood.
Conflict that arises with identity. Again, it's based on capacity. It's based on, like, there has to be a whole bunch of context behind it. Like, is this someone that I need to understand this? Is this someone who is going to not listen to me and is going to be like yell at me or make me feel unsafe? If I could and I had the capacity and if I had the time, I'd educate everyone. I'd provide resources for everyone. But I know that not everyone is going to be willing to receive it.
And to that point, like I'll even just say, you know, I'm biracial, I'm light skinned, so no one ever knows what I am. Could be Dominican, could be Egyptian, you know what I'm saying? Like it's whatever. I could be Ethiopia, I could be whatever. But and I've spoken about this with a few of the people in the room, but there became a certain point. It was after college, and a switch was flipped, and I no longer saw brown men as partners. It was white men. And it was a time where I started to think like I could be interested in procreating. And I thought, I don't want to raise or even have to deal with raising children that are brown or possibly than me. And speaking with them about what that means in this country and what they need to look out for that other people do not, like my mom. And she wouldn't be able to assist as a family member, as a grandmother in this raising, because she doesn't quite get it either. And that is the true reason, like actually mentally why that switch just occurred. And there are a lot of gaps there in that cultural divide of dating white men, that they don't understand really anything about me or what I'm going through, even though I'm light skinned, but people see me as black in this country. Or we'll go as far as to say I'm African American, which I'm like, that's the most. But you know, that's a real ass, difficult ass thing to say. Like Mark is just looking down at his hands while I'm talking about this. My dad knows that I think this way, and he had to walk out the room. Like that is a very difficult conversation to have.
And every black parent has to have it with their child.
Right? You gotta feel no type of way. But you know what? Like for you to go through that, me having my head down isn't me feeling any type of way. I'm really internalizing what you're saying because I've known you for that long. And if you ever felt that type of way, I'm like really an open door type of person. Vicky knows this. If she ever needs me for anything, I'm there. And like just to feel that type of way, I feel like nobody should. You even have a question to ask that if it ever has to do anything with how does a black person interpret this or whichever, I would say ask me that question. I don't care, because as long as you're willing to ask shows me that you care. You understand what I'm saying?
From
It's not
my,
malicious.
like,
Yeah,
hearing you say that is like really sad, because I obviously have never even had to think about that.
It's not fun.
Me either though.
Like, I've never seen a black guy and been like, oh, I'm like, oh, he's hot. Like, maybe I should. I've never seriously dated one, but like, if I wanted to, I don't.
Not a question.
That wouldn't even cross my mind. But then that makes me think like, what would he be thinking about me, and like, how do we bridge that? How would we even bridge that gap? So like I don't want to not be able, you know, that like, I want to not have that option.
Right, like you didn't even know that until that was just said right now.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't know what you don't know until someone just shows
Says
it to
it.
you.
Yeah.
And that's the point of conversation.
Yeah, that's
Of what
why
people
I'm
aren't
avoiding
having.
dating white people. I don't want to have to go through that educational period. I don't want to have to educate my partner on my experiences of being black. I have to be with somebody who understands that when we walk outside, we need to have our IDs on us. Like, I need to be with somebody who understands when we get pulled over, there's a game plan that we need to come up with.
What if you met someone who's white, and there's just like something that was
Right, you can't
bringing you
deny
guys, you
it.
couldn't deny it. Like, how do like if that was me and we were dating, which like maybe one day,
Hey,
no, just kidding.
one never knows.
One never knows. But like, what can I do what could I do? What can white people do to like make it so you don't feel like it's a
Job.
It's a job.
chore.
You feel like, you know, being supportive and like just trying to. It's like just trying to understand and be there when you obviously cannot fully understand.
Is understanding that you can't fully understand. That's like the first step. Is understanding I'm never gonna fully understand. What your job is of understanding is how you can show up for that person.
Yeah.
So like when situations do happen, how can I use my white privilege in that situation to like hold this person down? Because I know this person's about to have a whole other experience with this law enforcement than I'm about to have. Or even when we're at the restaurant, like for example, I have like white friends and white family members, right? And like whenever we go to catch a cab, they know that they need to be the ones to do that, right? Because like the cab's probably not gonna pick me up. We know when we go to make reservations, they need to be the one to step up and make the reservation, and it needs to be in their name because they know that I might get skipped over. So it's like my white friends and my white family members knowing that like they have a responsibility in their privilege, knowing that society is set up the way it is, that like they need to show up in these ways because like they have to understand that like they're not gonna fully understand my experience, but they have to fully understand their privilege.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because that comes down to like name. Like you see that on the application, there's no way I'm getting past the turned down. Like that's the reason why I was given the name that I was. And my brother's given the name.
You couldn't be
so
Laquan.
you couldn't be subjected.
You just can't.
It's just a factor. It's funny you brought that up, and that's the first thing that popped in my mind. Name. You understand what I'm saying? Even when I'm pick up the phone, a lot of people will tell you when you hear me over the phone, you would not think I am who I am in person. You wouldn't think I'm black.
Was there work put in there for that?
Was there? I mean, I was raised through education. I had to hold myself to a certain extent. I wasn't, using certain words. I couldn't say ain't and all that. My mother raised me. It's not the fact that I went through that. My mother raised me and taught me certain ways how to carry myself. Period. So no one should ever have a problem with me.
But it falls into respectability politics of what type of things that I need to follow as a black person in order to even be validated in this country, right? And even if that means that my child can't experience the freedoms that they should have every right to, if they act like this, then they might be able to walk amongst this earth like another day.
For sure. No, you're right. Because, I mean, thinking as a black male and stuff, I didn't think about that in high school. I just was able to move how I was able to move.
Right.
Until maybe my second year in college is when I started looking at, if I do that, I could be, looked at differently, that type of thing. Like, I grew up in a very diverse town.
Yeah.
Where I was respected from white kids, Spanish kids. I made friends with everybody. So there's rarely anybody who could say that they wasn't my friends,
True.
So we went through that. So you talk about, I came from a whole different spectrum from a lot of other black kids themselves. They'd be like, how can you get down with that white boy? What do you mean?
Right, I don't get it.
Like, he's not white to me first and foremost because I never saw color. You know what I mean? So it's a different aspect when it comes to just being around people and what it could be looked at from the outside in, where I have my friends that carry themselves a certain way and I have other friends that carry themselves a certain way. And literally for me, I could say, respectively, I play both sides of the spectrum. And I'm not ashamed to say it at all because, like I said, you have to know when to carry yourself. You're going to curse up a storm around your friends, but when you get around your parents, you're holding yourself up tight. Everybody does it.
Code switching.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I'm not doing it in a way to be accepted by anybody or anything like that.
You're not assimilating.
Just being respectful.
It's just how I am. It's not even respect. It's just I've been around it. There was no, this is that. This is just how I learned there. This is how I learned here. And if I ever have to use that here or use that here, I'm respected either way. So I get that from anybody that comes in touch with me, But it comes down to respecting how people view you and if they are willing to, be open to you or respect where you're coming from or how you carry yourself. I think it goes a long way.
I feel like I hear that, and then it's also like if I was like that, then I couldn't really be my true self. If respectability for me means that I need to dress a certain way or I need to carry myself in a certain way, because I'm constantly pushing up against like social norms, right? Like if I say ain't, I said ain't. You know what I meant when I said it, and I don't care if this is a space where I'm supposed to use a different type of vernacular. I have an undergrad degree from University of Maryland, and my graduate degree is from Columbia University. I'm an Ivy League student, but I can still choose to use Ebonics, and you're still going to understand what I'm saying when I'm saying it. And so for me, it's just like I understand people feeling the need to fall into this respectability politics, but I also am someone where it's just like, if I'm constantly falling into respectability politics, what does that mean for the kids coming up who don't have access to that language, who don't have access to that education, and they're still trying to get into the same doors that I'm in?
Right, but see, now if that child does come across you would change, hey, you know, you can't really say it that way, say it this way. You're gonna correct that because you already know how they can fall.
I know how they can fall. I think. Well, if they're not my child, then I can offer them something different. At home, they may be getting that respectability thing, but they can also see someone who is gender nonconforming, someone who is black, and someone who has had a very successful career, and be like, well, they're saying ain't right. Like, so I can use it in these spaces, and then I could also choose a path where I can say ain't and still be successful.
Yeah, of course. It's not an on and off switch for me. It just is what it is when it comes out. However it comes out, it's not a switch. So. You know, like I said, it's just ultimately is people being able to ask what they want to ask at a certain time.
So I think that's interesting because there's not enough people that ask what they want to ask, or there's enough people that ask what they want to ask. There's not enough people that are willing to understand it, or like there are people that you have to educate on things, like you know, all of this women's movement. Like men don't want to hear it. They're not like, you know. No offense, but offense. But like, you know, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way of like everything you have to deal with, but like, if I have to defend myself of why that's offensive to me, I don't have the energy unless you're like really trying to understand and then like adjusting. Like, don't say this because it offends me, or like, you know, but so many people are like, well, I don't understand why that's offensive, so I'm just gonna keep going. What's wrong with it? Let me try to think of like.
The first thing that comes to my mind is like, oh, you have your period? No, I'm just a bitch. So how about that? I'm just loud today.
Or you just want to hold them accountable in the moment because you just said something disrespectful.
Right, like,
and
you know how many times I like, you know, a man says something like really sexually offensive, like in the office, and I'm just like, I don't want to deal with this right now because I'm going to be like, that's offensive, and then they're going to be like,
we wore skirt today.
Yeah, or they're going to be like, you're just too uptight, and I'm like,
just see like that way, just not even to cut you off, but just like how you feel, I think that's how it is in like a biracial relationship, like you were stating earlier. It's just some things that you just got to know, you know, when to stick up for, when not to.
Yeah, but I think that's like tough.
Avoiding all roadblocks. I'm just avoiding all roadblocks. Like it's so many. Just by dating someone who isn't a white person, I avoid so many conversations. Not to say that there aren't black people who I've dated who weren't problematic, right?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit there and say that, but I'm more willing to sit with them through that because they are someone who either has had similar experiences as me or are going to go through similar experiences.
Yeah, but I think like. I mean, I'm this again, like I try not to deal with it because it's like, unless someone's really interested in learning and like going to adjust how they behave because of like how it makes somebody else feel, like I'm not going to go through that. Like I'm not going to waste my time and tell you that like you shouldn't do this because of X, Y, Z if you're just going to be like, well, you're just being sensitive, you know? But having said that, like I'm really struggling right now between feeling like it's my obligation to stand up and educate and like, you know, and but it makes you try to figure out other ways to do it. So maybe you don't want to have to every day stick up for something that's offensive. So then go to your policy chair and talk to them about what does it mean to change office norms when it comes to like these things.
When I was 15, I got my first blowjob from a girl. I'll never forget, it was Super Bowl. It was in the bathroom, it was halftime.
You'll never forget!
My buddy, he looked at me and he said, did you use protection? And I said, Dad, no, I just got a blowjob.
Oh no!
We didn't have sex.
And what is it societally that like makes it, it's like a job. It's like, okay, we have turned 15 now, we have a job to do. Like, what is that?
Yeah. And everyone knew within a couple days, I was the man, and the girl got tormented.
Absolutely. Can you imagine being the girl that died from the D?
I was raised Southern Baptist, right? So sex is just like wrong no matter what. And so then I felt like I was a sinner just for having a sexual body. So I started to really hate myself for it.
We're in it now. So we just wrapped our convo and it was excellent. We hope you liked it. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow YouTube, Patreon, Instagram, Facebook, And yes, you'll see this ending a lot because who doesn't love a little consistency, and we wanted to do it one time, so let's do it.